good to be with you folks. It's Tuesday evening, and I'm tickled to be with you here again. Our first viewer asks this. Have you noticed that when you help someone to feel loved, that they come back a lot for more? I had a friend today tell me that she felt that I listened to her and understood her need to feel loved by her mom all these years. Then she called 4 more times during the day, and I thought that was interesting, and I wondered if it was uncommon. So imagine that you're dying of thirst in the middle of the desert, and somebody comes along and gives you a cup of water from a 5-gallon jug that they're carrying. And then they walk 50 yards away and sit down under a tree, which would be, I guess, hard to imagine in the middle of the desert, but for the purpose of our picture, try that. So after a little bit, because you're sitting out in the hot sun, you get thirsty again. What would you do? Kind of obviously, you'd go and find the person who had already given you water from the 5-gallon jug, assuming that they could give you more. And it's like that for most of us. Most of us have been without the unconditional love that we need our entire lives. And so we are dying of thirst. And then somebody comes along and gives us a moment of genuine acceptance. Remember, we'll do virtually anything for a moment of imitation love. We'll do almost anything for money, power, praise, sex, whatever. So if we'll do a lot for imitation, which we know always wears off, imagine what we'll do once somebody gives us an actual cup of the real thing, of, water that actually makes a difference. That's pretty exciting for a lot of people. And it's very tempting, in fact, under those circumstances, to feel important and to take their gratitude as a kind of approval or praise or power. So it'd be pretty easy to abuse people's gratitude and turn it into a kind of imitation love. But you can sure understand why your friend would come to you. This was probably a singular event for him or her. So yeah, it's a pretty common thing. I thought I'd just mention that if you're not familiar already, if you're not caught up to the electronic age, there's so many different things you can do. MySpace, Facebook, many people are just catching up to emails. Many people haven't learned to answer the phone messages, for that matter. But there's a new, relatively new, electronic experience called Twitter, where you can post either what you're thinking or doing during the day, and people can follow what's going on. And for some time now, I guess, a couple weeks, we've been posting 1 to 2 messages each day about either principles of real love or experiences we've had with real love. And so I recommend that you sign on to Twitter, TWITTER.com. And then once you're there, there's a big blank space where you can type in the name of the person you're trying to follow. It says, see what people are saying about. And if you type in Real Love Greg, you can find the Twitters that we're posting. Excuse me, the tweets. One goes on to Twitter and then tweets. Next viewer says, I'm hearing you say that I should take responsibility for the situations that I am creating, which would mean that if I choose actions that are more loving, I won't feel like a victim of the emotional feelings of not being loved. You're saying that I shouldn't blame other people for my lack of love. So does truth-telling help me to take responsibility? Well, first, although it seems like a small modification, I'm not telling you should do anything. In many cases, we're incapable of being loving. So I don't tell people you should be loving, because what if they can't be? But I do describe loving as an infinite, and being responsible as infinitely happier, leading to better results than blaming other people and feeling victimized by them. So I suggest that it's always more productive to take responsibility for our behavior and our feelings. If I'm unhappy, I'm doing or saying or seeing something wrong. every time. I'm believing a lie. I'm not being responsible. Something. There's always something wrong with what I'm doing if I'm unhappy. And then you ask, so does truth-telling, sorry, I'm sort of skipping behind actually. So let me give you an example, and this applies to everything, taking responsibility. One example would be, let's say that somebody insults you. You could say, which many of us do, how dare they talk to me like that? And then we would feel victimized, we would be unhappy, be miserable, be angry, or we could make a more productive and responsible choice and say, this person must be pretty miserable. And their attacking me is a reflection of their unhappiness and their emptiness, and really not so much about me at all. They must be feeling unloved. So what could I do that would possibly infuse more unconditional acceptance or love into this situation? Now, what would loving them look like? I mean, you've got somebody who's insulting you. Maybe giving them a hug wouldn't be the most appropriate thing. But you can understand them, which we just talked about. You can actually listen to them. You can be wrong. So, for example, when somebody says, well, you're a complete jerk. You could argue, I'm not a jerk all the time, but see, now you're just defending yourself. Or you could really listen to them and say, I've noticed that myself. If you're in a particularly light mood, you might say, well, it's taken you far longer to realize that than most people. But to really listen would involve saying, well, I believe you. Can you tell me what you're talking about? Can you tell me what specific behavior of mine has led you to conclude that, I behave jerkily? Give them a chance to really talk to you, which is what they want to do, or they wouldn't have spoken. When somebody says you're a jerk, they're not looking for you to defend yourself. They're not looking for you to tell them how they're a jerk too, even if it's true. There's more they want to say. And if you say, so give it all to me. Tell me what it is that's bothering you. Oh, that can be just utterly disarming. And then, as much as possible, you can offer some kind of attention, affection. So what can I do to make it different? Now, it's not always possible to please the person that is speaking to you. For example, when a child says, you're a jerk because you won't let me stay up past midnight on a school night. Well, yes, I often have been a jerk with you. But that doesn't then obligate you to let the child do what he or she wants. But at least we can listen rather than defend. And what is the role of truth-telling in all of this? Well, it's pretty much the beginning of everything. If I'm angry, I'm wrong. That's telling the truth. And if I realize that I'm angry, how could I possibly stay angry at somebody else in a situation where they may be behaving like a jerk? If I'm controlling, I'm selfish. And as I tell the truth, that doesn't necessarily, just because I'm wrong, doesn't mean that the other person is right. But as I take responsibility for my feelings and behavior, wow, my goodness, everything changes. I was talking to a couple just recently, and they'd been playing the same game of attacking each other for years, decades. When we got to the place finally where one of them could tell the truth and say, I've been wrong, it's my fault, then that made it possible for the other one to feel safe enough that, not feeling attacked, she could say, well, I've been wrong too. And once just one person takes responsibility for a difficult situation, pretty much puts the fire out of the conflict. This next question says, I have a question about acceptance. What does truly accepting another person's choices look like? It seems easy to say, but sometimes I think I'm being accepting, but it doesn't come off to others that I really am being. So let's just look at a couple of examples to illustrate. Somebody is angry at you, And if you really accept them, then you don't respond with anger. You accept their feelings as being true for them. You accept their experience as being true for them. And you really listen to them rather than defend yourself. You tell the truth about yourself as much as you possibly can, as opposed to trying to defend yourself, as opposed to, even if you're not defending yourself, trying to get them to be something other than angry. In fact, that can even apply to giving them what they want, because in many cases when we give people what they want when they're angry, we're not doing it for their benefit, we're doing it so they'll quit being angry at us. So accepting somebody it's a really freeing experience. Really accepting people is not effortful. That's another thing that will tell you whether you're being accepting. If you're with somebody and you're finding it just difficult to be with them, virtually impossible that you're genuinely accepting them. This viewer says, if anybody would have asked me a month ago, I would have said that a divorce was the answer I was looking for. I thought that was the only way to end the pain. Now, though, I am 10 days into a separation from my husband, and I have never felt so alone, empty, or afraid. I really do feel like I'm drowning. I do not know how to accept the divorce, and I don't know how to heal my heart enough when I ever will feel like I'm okay again. I do love my husband. I would really like to heal my marriage, but I do not know how to do that. I don't have the strength or the courage to go on. So, that last sentence, I don't have the strength or courage to go on, if you're talking about suicidal thoughts, I'm probably not going to be able to address that on a video chat, especially when you may see it archived a week later. So if you're really feeling like you want to end your life, then you need to call the hospital. You need to call 911. You need to, wherever you are, get some kind of professional mental health help. If you're not thinking about killing yourself, well, even if you were, I understand the feeling. I mean, when life gets hard enough, it's like being dead's better than being in pain, or at least so it seems. But assuming that suicide is not your thought, then it's about two things mostly. It's about understanding things differently, and it's about getting what you need, and then eventually behaving differently. So understanding. Talk to people who can help you see this differently. Don't talk to people who will give you sympathy. Talk to people who will help you change your perspective. Until we genuinely change the way we see something, we will keep feeling the same and we will keep behaving the same. So we can't just go, I'm going to buck up and not be discouraged. No, that's not going to last long. You have to actually see what's going on differently, not just more positively, but more truly. So, for example, what's going on with your husband? Well, you wouldn't have gotten to this place if he wasn't feeling empty and alone and frightened and frustrated. This wouldn't be happening. And it wouldn't be happening unless you had gotten to this place. So it's about telling the truth about how things are. It's impossible that the two of you, individually and together, have enough unconditional love in your life to make this marriage succeed. So hear what I just said. I'm not saying there's something wrong with you, something wrong with him, you should or shouldn't have anything. What I'm saying is this was probably doomed from the beginning, because neither of you had the skills from the beginning to build a loving relationship. Well, understanding that is huge. Now you're not blaming him. You're not feeling guilty yourself. Perspective is enormous. Little things, like you said, I do love my husband. Maybe, but if he's feeling that miserable and alone and empty, it's highly likely that there is some contribution from you toward his not feeling loved. And so it's usually true, as in, let me think, 100% of the times I've counseled couples, that when one or both people say, well, but I do love my spouse. No, you probably don't. You probably want to. You probably wish you had. You probably know you should. You probably wish you could. But you really don't. Or you wouldn't be where you are. So it would be much more accurate to say, I wish I knew how to love my husband better. I would like to learn how to love my husband better. Well, now, with that change in perspective, you can accomplish just about anything. So that's a change in understanding. And I'm just giving you a couple of examples of how to see things differently. There are many others. And as you talk to people in the Real Love community, either in the online conference calls that you'll find described at the website, in the forum, calling people individually, meeting in Real Love groups, as you have more experience with Real Love people, they will help you see a lot of things differently. And then, of course, the next part is you're both drowning, and somebody's got to get out of the water. You could wait for him to do it, but that could be a long wait. Or you could make the decision that you're going to find the unconditional love you need, and you'll find a great deal about that in the books, on the website, just asking people what you can do. So change your understanding, change your perspective, and then get the love that you've been missing, very likely from the beginning of your relationship, probably from the beginning of your life. This next viewer says, my brother has been in the hospital for the past 10 months as a result of a car accident. Prior to his accident, we were not really close. We didn't spend a lot of time together. As his only immediate family member, besides a daughter who is irresponsible and on drugs and unavailable, I stepped in to be a source of support and love, and it's drained me every way, financially, physically, emotionally. I take things to him that he needs. I take food to try to help him eat regular meals so that he can have his feeding tube removed. I do a lot of other things to help. Now he's feeling depressed, and I'm feeling exhausted. This past weekend, my husband and I visited him, and my husband gave him a haircut. I got him some food, cleaned his nails, paid to have cable in his hospital room for a few days. But despite all the efforts that I've made, he's demanding and ungrateful, and there were times I just wanted to slap him. Right while he sat in his wheelchair. I feel guilty for wanting to stop doing so much for him. He has no quality of life, and in some ways I feel guilty that we didn't have him removed from life support when we thought he wasn't going to live in the ICU 10 months ago. It doesn't look like he'll ever get out of rehab, and I'm feeling scared that this is going to drag on for a really long time. I'd like to be able to back away from him, but I don't know if or how I can do that. Any suggestions on how to cope better with this situation would be helpful. So, see him and see you. All about things change as we see the truth about things. You can understand why he might be demanding. Well, for one thing, our ability to control our natural impulses, which are to be selfish, grabby, ungrateful, victim-y. We all have these tendencies within us. And the more we learn, the more we're able to change those natural tendencies to more patience, acceptance, and so on. So you'll notice that when, for example, people have been drinking or using drugs, their higher order brain functions, their control over the natural impulses to reach out and react and be selfish, their higher order brain functions with alcohol and drugs are impaired. And so what comes out is not so much who they are, because who we are is all of those things. All of our efforts to control ourselves, all of our base impulses, it's all of that. But as we lose the higher order functions, our ability to be loving, what we've learned over time, as those disappear, the natural impulses just come rolling out like out of a volcano. And so, he's been brain damaged, he's been in an accident, he's sitting all by himself in a wheelchair or in a bed much of the time. He must feel like he's just at the bottom of the world. So it's pretty understandable that he would get like this at times. I had a patient once who was a minister and had all of his life been kind to people, served them, quoted millions of scriptures. His family described him as a calm, loving man. And as he got Alzheimer's, whoa, his inhibitions just vanished. And he'd come into the office and I'd ask him how he was doing, and he would just curse. He had the most foul mouth, and his family would apologize. And I'd say, whoa, no, you don't need to apologize. He just has, when you and I see something in somebody that we don't like, we don't just burst out with, oh, what a stupid idiot, how could you do that? Because we realize, that's not a kind thing to do. I shouldn't do that. And so we don't. We go, no, those thoughts will always come, here and there to all of us. But we have a choice what we do. But as our ability to really think goes away, those inhibitions disappear, and that's what's happened to him. Now, the second part is that even though he's enormously needy, like, whoa, a Grand Canyon of need, that doesn't obligate you to do anything. Just because you have great needs, even if you're related to me, even if you are my only living relative, doesn't mean I'm responsible for filling them. If we followed that reasoning, anybody who wanted something from us, we'd have to give it to them. Well, there wouldn't be enough time in a day. And if we agreed to do that, we'd discover people crawling out of the woodwork because we are so easily manipulated, and all we'd become is everybody else's slave. So, it's about real love. It's about real love means what you can give freely or unconditionally. And so you decide, okay, I can and I wish to offer this much time and attention. How much time and attention can I offer freely without feeling stressed, put upon, motivated by guilt? You make a decision what you want to give freely, and then that's all you do. Now, when you do that, there invariably will be people, like your brother, who will say, well, but I want more. And I've heard that many times from people. People said, well, but, and I'll say, well, I will give you 5 of whatever. $5, 5 minutes, 5 units of attention. I'll give you 5 of whatever. And the other person will say, but I want 10. The only reasonable response to that is, noted. I understand that you want 10. And I'm offering you 5. So now you have a choice. Now, I don't get to this place with many people because most people go, wow, they're not used to people not caving into their techniques of guilt. But if somebody pushes me and says, well, but I still want 10. I know that. I understand. So now you have a choice. You can take the 5 I offer and enjoy it, be happy for it, be glad, feel the love that I'm offering that these 5 units simply represent, or you can continue to insist on 10 from me, in which case now my 5 won't even be 5. It'll be 0. Because all you'll register in your head is, he didn't give me what he wants. And, I may continue to give you 5 for a while, but if you continue to be unhappy with 5, after a while I'm going to conclude, let's see, I could give 5 to you, Fred, and see no result. It's not making your life any happier. In fact, you become bitter when I give you 5. Or I could give those 5 units of time, attention, money, whatever it is, to Susie, who would benefit from it, because it's not helping you. So after a while, I'm going to conclude you don't even want the 5, and I'll quit. So I've said that to people, and with most people it makes an impression. It's like, wow, I didn't realize how selfish I'd been. Some people it doesn't. Some people to continue to get annoyed. And then I still have a choice. I can still continue to give the 5 because I just think it's the loving thing to do. I'm not going to give you my love so that you will be appreciative and grateful. No. But if you continue to reject it long enough, the math's easy. There's no yield here. And I'll give it to somebody who would at least benefit from it, which is not the same to say as be grateful to me for it. So you do your best, honey. And, we always want to be stretching our ability to love a little bit, but you don't want to stretch it to the place where you feel stressed and can't love anybody. That's just awful. This viewer says, I'm a 52-year-old divorced man. My last relationship was going fabulously until it ended abruptly because the woman with whom I was involved for over half a year was too afraid to get further involved because she deemed that I was not financially secure enough for her not to ever have to worry about me. I'm getting tired of always hearing, you're one of the nicest guys I've ever met, but... women tend to like me a lot for my relationship and communication skills, but although I always have employment, I have endured some major economic stumbles in my life which have hindered my ability to save much for retirement and to participate in some of the finer things in life like fine dining and travel. I easily meet professional women who do very well for themselves, but they always seem to be looking for a man who does even better. Personally, I grew up in affluence, and I've been both rich and poor in my lifetime twice over. I know from personal experience that having money does not equate to happiness. It's very disheartening and has been difficult for me to meet educated and intelligent women who do not think in these terms. We have to understand, we have to remember, we have to be accepting of the fact that the world pretty much runs on an economy of imitation love. It's all about trading, counting, assessing, measuring, exchanging money, power, sex, approval, influence. It just goes just on and on. That's how the world runs. That's the economy. And so rather than being impatient with it, simply recognize it. That's a perspective that would help you. Notice that even in the last part of your note here, you fell into it yourself. You referred to your desire to meet educated and intelligent women. Well, understandable that you want to be able to have a relationship with somebody who can put together a, understandable sentence. But as men talk about the fact that women don't accept them, I ask them what they're looking for, and they immediately have their own list. Has to have body that looks like this, has to be educated, has to like music, has to blah, 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 blah. And the more of those criteria that we establish that are not related to simple truthfulness and an interest in learning to be unconditionally loving, the more that we set the criteria, the more we narrow our view of the world, to the point where I've seen people set enough criteria to where all they can see is like this. They can see one woman in 1,000. Well, what if they're and in the end, those things in common don't matter that much anyway. What if their perfect partner is somebody who's 10 pounds heavier than they wanted, who doesn't play the guitar, heaven help her, who doesn't like to hike in the Sierras, whatever. Very often, we just took the people that would be best for us and we just weeded them out. Because what we're looking for is to create those little moments of pleasure, comfort, ease, satisfaction to ourselves that we've always gotten in the past from imitation love, and we figure, well, if I find that enough in a partner, then I'll be happy. Oh, we need to think differently. So, solution? Well, I would suggest reading the dating book right off. The dating book will give you pages and pages of suggestions as to what characteristics really matter. Tell the truth about yourself. Tell the truth about yourself to women that you're dating. Tell the truth about yourself to other people so you can have more experience with what unconditional love feels like, so that then you'll recognize it in a potential partner. Look online. Going online is a great place to find a partner, or at least a great place to weed out those you don't want. And it starts with your profile. Now, read about writing a profile in the dating book. Read about what things really matter, as opposed to going, I like moonlight walks, and I like to read books by Jane Austen, which are all lies probably anyway. Those aren't the things that are going to create a long and fulfilling relationship anyway. So talk about the fact that you're looking for somebody who can be completely honest. You're looking for somebody who would be willing to investigate with you how to learn to be unconditionally loving. Whoa, how many people say that? And you will attract a different kind of woman. It may be that what you're looking for in a woman, educated, intelligent, accomplished, is exactly the kind of woman who would tend to be looking for that in you, which is why you're finding women who go, not very financially stable. So changing the way we see the whole world is an important part of this, and especially changing the way we see potential partners. This reader says, my husband, Fred, and I were at a friend's garage sale helping out. They mentioned to both of us that they'd make spaghetti for dinner for anybody who wanted to stay. I assume, stay through the garage sale and help them out. I ended up not feeling well and decided to leave early, about 3 o'clock. Fred opted to take me home so he could have the car. I went to bed and I slept till about 7. I thought he was going to go back to the sale and have dinner, but he ended up doing some errands, coming home, having a drink, and fell asleep. He woke up also about 7, and he came to me and he said, will you call those guys and see if they're still having dinner? I said, in a whiny tone of voice, I don't want to call them. I'm not feeling well. I really didn't want to call them because I felt stupid calling and asking them if Fred could still come to dinner, because I felt like, well, that was his responsibility. He wanted dinner, and he was going to have it without me. Well, then he ought to call and arrange for dinner for himself instead of me doing it. I felt like I was being his mom. He got mad and said, fine, I'll find my own dinner. I'm sure the tone wasn't that far off. And clearly you were being asked to be his mother, and he was demanding it. He was demanding that you make his life easy. He was embarrassed that he didn't go and continue to help with the sale, and then pops in at the last minute and expects to be treated like people who stayed there all day. And the important thing for you to get out of this is not that he was doing it wrong, but that, he wouldn't be making these kind of demands, that you make up for what he hasn't done, that you take care of needs that really, in this case, are kind of selfish, because it wasn't like he was asking you to do something that he didn't know how to do. He wouldn't do that if you hadn't taken that role many times. So it's a virtual certainty that early in your marriage, probably all your marriage, you have rescued him and taken care of him. So now he's going, well, just do it again. Duh. So if you've established the pattern, he's going to count on the pattern, even if you don't like the pattern. At that point, you continue, I said, I'll call, but I'm just not sure what you want me to say. It feels kind of weird. So we always want to try to be loving and give what we can, like I said to another viewer earlier on. But if you can't do something without emptying out, here you didn't want to do it in the first place, you were feeling sick, and it was like, I don't want to do this. Then don't. And see, now if you can do it in a completely unconditionally loving way, great. But clearly you couldn't. You were saying that you couldn't. But you gave in and said, okay, I'll make the call. Why? Because you suddenly had a little influx of unconditional love from the cosmos? No. You gave in because he had a tantrum. Well, honey, what did you just teach him? Without meaning to, just like you were training a dog, you trained him this way. You said, well, if you ask me once, I won't do it. If you whine and fuss and throw a little tantrum and get mad, then I will. So what did you just do? You just trained him to throw a tantrum. Now, I have no doubt that he came to your relationship in the first place already having them, But now, you just confirmed that that's the way to get what he wants. So what do you think he's going to do now, sweetie, anytime he wants something? He's going to start off feeling a little victim-y and whiny and attacking, and then if you don't respond, boom, in come the big guns, stomping off and having a little fit. You continue. He said, no, I'll just go get dinner on my own. So he left and came home about 3 hours later. And see, by leaving and having dinner and taking 3 hours to do it, it's kind of a little up yours. See? I was pleasant. I went to kiss him hello, and he sort of accepted it. Again, by sort of accepting it, it's his way of saying, well, I'm still mad at you. You have a whole lot more to do before you're going to make up for the crime you've committed. And then, of course, you accept that. You go, okay, I'm a criminal. I've done a bad thing. And then you keep doing whatever it takes to win his approval again, to make him feel better. You're being his mummy. I didn't say much to him, but then I sat next to him while I was doing a project. I thanked him for getting something at the store, but I didn't overdo it. I asked him if he wanted to watch any television, and he said, no, I'll watch it when you leave. So do I let it go and not do anything more and let him stay mad as long as he wants? Sometimes he's over it the next morning. Sometimes it takes a day or two. I know I could apologize for being whiny, but I'm not sure what else of this is mine and what's truth-telling and what is placating or feeding victimhood. Can you help me see what I can do now and what I could have done differently? I do want to love him, but I don't want to take responsibility that isn't mine and won't help him. So, this is a great balance, your questions. You want to be loving, but you don't want to just give in and do whatever it takes to get rid of his anger, because what that'll do is train him to be a victim, and then he will be forever. He'll blame everything on you and go, well, look, you have to make up for it. You have to make me feel good. Of course he will. Little children do that. So what should you do? Well, you're going to be happier if you give what you can give. And if at some point, because see, you're changing the rules now. All this time you've been willing to give in to his victimhood. So now you just love him as well as you can, and then you just go on about your business. Now, you might try that several times. You might try that for a week. You might try that for a month. Depends on how much experience he has with hearing you telling the truth. But at some point, if he doesn't respond to unconditional love, then he's going to have to participate in this game. He can't be diapered and swaddled and fed and cared for, all of his life. If he wants to be happy, he's going to eventually have to tell the truth. And so then you talk to him and you say, you seem to be irritated. Is there anything that's going on that we could talk about? I would like to hear what it is. And then when he says, well, it's because you blank, always respond with the truth. Oh, I'm sure I could have done it better in a number of ways. I could have done this better. I could have done that better. Now, having said that, why are you angry? Keep this up. See, I happen to know him. And if somebody has been a victim for a very long time, you can love them and love them and love them, but at some point, many victims just go, well, good, I'm finally getting what I want, and I'm going to continue to blame you. No, at some point, you have to actually talk about it. And then ask him again, so why was it you're angry? I just acknowledged that I made a mistake. Well, I'm angry because you... And then you have to at some point say, that is simply not true. Simply not true that that's the reason you're angry. You could have also chosen not to be angry when I was imperfect and when I made a mistake. But you keep blaming your unhappiness on me. And at some point, if you want to be happy, you don't have to do it for me, but at some point, if you want to be happy, you'll have to acknowledge your responsibility in this. For example, making the call about dinner. You say, I didn't feel good. I didn't feel like making the call. And so now, had you been loving, you would have said, oh, well, okay, she doesn't feel good, so now I have a choice. We can either not make the call, I can not make the call and fix dinner for myself, or I can make the call and go over and have dinner with these people. But it is not, then you say to him, it is not my responsibility to make that call. So it turns out that when you asked me to make it, you weren't really asking me a question. You were giving me an order. You were saying, here's what you have to do. And you know, I really don't. I really don't have to. I'm really not your servant. I'm your wife. I would like to love you as well as I can, but I don't have to. If you have any doubts about that, imagine what would happen if I came to you and told you, you have to do this. You'd just be furious. So you're furious either way. You're furious if you're told what to do, and you're furious if anybody refuses to do what you tell them to do. So pretty much your definition of happiness is everything goes your way. And if you'll read the victim book, you'll find lots of different ways that you can talk to a victim about their victimhood without shaming them, without telling them they have to do anything. But if they don't take responsibility for their own behavior, eventually no amount of love ever given to them ever does any good. And it's because they take everything as imitation love. It's because they've manipulated for it and demanded it. Here's somebody who says, I've been exchanging emails with somebody who was dating another person for a couple of months until he ended the relationship without much explanation. She later found out that he is married. She recently sent him a text thanking him for allowing her to love him unconditionally, that he was loving her the best that he could, go in peace, and she loves him. I said that was clinging, not loving. She asked me to explain. I haven't answered yet. Sometimes I question my own conclusions. I have to get all the he's and she's here. If somebody is dating somebody who's married, and they're dating, well, in the first place, to date somebody who's married is fairly insane, because what you're doing is asking them to violate a covenant that they've made. You're asking them to violate a promise, an obligation that they've made to stay with exclusively their spouse. So not real smart to start with. But let's say that you've got somebody who is technically married, but has been separated from their spouse for a long time, and this guy says, I'm divorcing my wife. I'm done. So I'm done with that obligation. Whether they're right or not, it's none of my business. But he says that. And so you date this guy, and it turns out that he's not really done with her. You know, he's still in this marriage part way, and he's kind of confused about it. Then you're finished. To attempt to change his mind while he's still married is just wrong. Not to mention stupid, because it just almost never works. In which case, you do just what this person says, or at least as I'm understanding that they've said, reading what you said here, that you say, look, I appreciate the opportunity to have an experience of learning to love you unconditionally, but this isn't going to work out for me, and I think you've done the best that you could. No blaming of you, so go in peace. Perfect. Now, it would be clinging. You could say exactly the same words, and it could still be clinging. If you said it like this, well, I know you're doing the best you can, so if this is all you can offer me, then I'll just go. I'm glad I had a chance to love you, and so go in peace. Now notice, I just used the same words that this woman used. But in the first instance, the way that I read them is sincere and loving and finally waking up. In the second way, it's a manipulation. It's clinging. So when you say it's clinging, well, depends entirely on the delivery. If I were to write somebody and say that, hey, this has been a mistake. You're married. You need to go figure this out with your wife. Thanks for the opportunity, and leave. And be done with it and mean it, that would actually be loving. But then if I sent that letter, and 2 weeks later, I wrote to this person that said, so, are you really done with your wife? it kind of shows that the first letter and my second one were really just manipulative clinging. So it's all about motivation. Motivation isn't a little of it, it's the whole deal. It's not the words. Here's somebody who says, I have a small side business to shop, cook, and deliver meals to those with special diets. I have a customer who seems very needy. In other words, acts like a victim most of the time. And I'm learning to set boundaries. In other words, to make strategic exits and speak up about what I'm willing to give freely. Otherwise, she will cling and keep me in her home, talking long past when I want to leave. I understand how to manage this. My question is, how do I handle my discomfort when she's being needy and I'm refusing to give her what she wants? This is about my own internal frustration and less about the conflict with her. I don't want to feel like a bad person because I am unwilling to be drained. This is just what we were talking about with a viewer earlier. It's what she needs is your genuine, freely given, unconditional attention. Yes? So that's what she needs. That's what you want to give. So if you stay any past when you can give that, she's going to feel that it's not unconditional love. She's going to feel like she's manipulating you for it. Then she's going to receive it as imitation love. So she's not going to be happy. You'll be emptied out so that now you're not capable of loving her or anybody else. Who just won in that scenario? Nobody. So if you're trying to not feel guilty, you need to remind yourself that if you keep trying to give past what you can give, everybody dies. Everybody loses. So whereas you think you're being nice, no, you're just being a prisoner to guilt. It isn't nice at all. It's just stupid. It's like trying to feed somebody past where you have food. So, yes, when I run out of food, I could cut my leg off and roast it over the fire and give it to the person who's hungry. Well, see, now I'm more crippled, less likely to get food for myself or that person, and may actually die from the experience. So is that a smart idea for me to cut my leg off and roast it? No. And yet, that's what you're feeling obligated to do. And many people will make you feel guilty. They'll keep wheedling you and keep trying to get you to stay a little longer. And I've been through this exact experience with many people. You go to visit them in the hospital and nursing home, they're home, on the phone, it doesn't matter. It's all the same. And you say, well, I have to go now. Well, just one more story. No. Look at the sentence. I have to go now. And if somebody keeps it up, sometimes I'll say, do you want me to play back that last sentence for you? And, if people haven't heard people be honest, it's kind of takes them aback first. And I'll say, do you want me to replay it? They go, which one? I say, I have to go now. The two operative words are go and now. I love you. I've enjoyed this, but I really do have to go now. Well, why? Well, the real answer is it's none of your business. But you don't want to say that because very few people can hear that in a loving tone. So you just say, I have other things I have to do. And don't you always? There's always something else to do. Wax the car, do your nails, watch the grass grow. You're not obligated to explain it to them. And if you do, you're foolish because they'll never find your reason sufficient. Because the thing that you have to go do is never as important as their needs. Talk to any victim on the planet and explain how your needs are as important as theirs. You email me if you ever have a positive experience with that. So, no, I just have to go. So remember, you actually hurt them and hurt you if you stay longer than you're capable of loving. Now, the third part of that is, hurts them, hurts you, because you're not really being loving. And the third part is, are you responsible for their life? They were empty long before you got there. You gave the best you could. You're done. Loving people doesn't mean giving them what they want or what they need. It means giving them what you can. And if you buy into the because I have a need, you have to supply it thing, well, give up your day job, honey. Give up your life because there are tens of thousands of kids dying in the Sudan. Move there and take care of all of them. We're the only ones who can make the choices about what we attend to, and we have to make them wisely, according to our abilities, not according to the definitions of others. Very important. This next viewer says, I'm a lesbian. How can I achieve real love with my partner forever without a marriage relationship? So, can you be happy with a partner while you're not married? Yes. Why do I then usually recommend to people that marriage is a better way to live? Because it's an increased level of commitment. And the more I commit to my partner, that I will stay with her and learn to be unconditionally loving toward her, even when things are difficult, the happier I'll be and the happier my relationship will be. If I have too easy an out, then when things begin to get painful enough, I'm going to go, I'm out of here. I don't like this. Whereas if I've made, the stronger the commitment I make, the more likely I am to stay there, to persist in the learning process, and in the end, I'll be happier. So that's why I tend to recommend marriage. Now, what if you can't get married? Like, for example, if you're a lesbian and you live in Texas, where gays cannot get married, then what do? Well, obviously you can't get married, but you can increase the level of commitment that you make to your partner. You could make formal vows to your partner and say, I promise to stay with you. You can go to the place on the website where I have the suggested vows for people in real love, and make those vows even in the absence of marriage. Oh, there are any number of conditions where you can exchange vows without being legally married. Many ministers will do this for you. It's about your commitment. It's about your desire and your intensity about wanting to be unconditionally loving with your partner. If you really want to go whole hog and make a big difference, then in your level of commitment, go find a state where they do permit marriage. And even if that doesn't transfer back to the state where you live, you will have made that increased level of commitment that will increase your willingness to learn to stay there and be loving rather than taking off. You continue. I think there are 2 states now that allow gay marriage, and it changes because one state will say yes, and then the court will reverse it, and so I admit I lose track. Massachusetts and Wisconsin, last I knew. You continue. I'm in love with a woman, but she is still in a marriage relationship with a man. We've had 2 or 3 people ask this tonight. Can I give her real love whether she is divorced or not? Of course, you can always unconditionally love her. I can unconditionally love her, and I don't know her. I can unconditionally love you, even though we may never meet. But if you want to reach more profound or higher levels of sharing unconditional love, it would require increased commitment, increased involvement. And if your potential partner is still married, that isn't going to be possible. And so, I suggest, are you satisfied with kind of the crumbs that fall off the table, which is what you're getting now, or do you want to have a truly exclusive, unconditionally loving, long-term relationship? If that's what you want, stop the relationship with this woman right now. Now you say, oh, but I'm in love with her. Yeah, I know. But falling in love comes and goes. And I'm not minimizing the discomfort of losing that kind of feeling, but my goodness, we fall in love with partners from the time we're 14. We fall in love with our dog. We fall in love with a kind of perfume. It's that transient, falling in love. If you want more, you have to be willing to give up that initial high of we're in love to make a real commitment with somebody and work at learning how to be unconditionally loving, which is far more profound. And once you really get into that kind of relationship, then you can find out what a whole different level of being in love is like. And it's the kind you grow into and develop rather than the kind that you fall into. You know, we fall into manholes. We fall into mud puddles. We don't fall into anything that's both true, lasting, and worthwhile. It just doesn't work like that. Just last night, this reader says, I was irritated at something my wife did, and I blew up at her. Among other unkind and ugly things, I said, now you see why I don't want to come home at night. I bet that went over well. How can I possibly make up for what I've done? Boy, I can see why you feel bad. I mean, that was pretty ugly. But do you have to? Now, I want you to notice something. As I read what you said, I'm not going, oh, man, that's just awful. Oh, what are we going to do? My initial impulse was to what? Laugh. Because when you said that, you are nuts. You are insane with emptiness, fear, anger, blaming, victimhood, something. And it's so much more helpful to see it that way than it is to now regard yourself as an evil human being. So, do you have to make up for it? No. You don't have to make up for the past. You can't ever make up for the past. It's over. But you can begin with simply telling the truth about yourself with her. So, you can tell her, sweetie, remember, last night when I said that terrible thing to you? You may not even want to repeat it so as to not re-inflict the wound. You say, I was crazy. I was a raving lunatic, and I'm not excusing what I did. I am asking you to regard it in a different way. If somebody had a high fever and they said something unkind, you wouldn't get upset because you'd go, he's out of his head. Or somebody had Alzheimer's and they cursed at you, for example, you'd go, it's just a product of the Alzheimer's. You might suggest to her that she at least consider that you are nuts and that you're telling the truth about it. You're not saying you're nuts to get out of it. You're saying it to explain it and going, wow, this is really crazy. And I'm going to pay attention to that. I'm going to tell the truth about it with you. And instead of feeling guilty and hiding it and defending myself, all of which are unproductive, I'm simply going to tell you, I was nuts. And I'm responsible now to do whatever it takes so that that kind of thing happens at least less. Certainly not never, because you'll do it again, but less. And then it turns out that this person, because I answered this person by email, and he actually wrote back, and he said, I'm afraid now that she'll say, I wonder now if you really do love me. Which is, understandable. Because, what you said was pretty harsh. And it's hard to take back those words. But the best thing to do is not defend and not say, oh, no, I really do. Don't do that, because that's not really true. You didn't love her in the moment. You might say to her, well, you're right to wonder if I love you. I mean, after all, in the moment that I said that hateful thing, I wasn't being loving. I meant what I said at the time that I said it. People do this all the time. They say, well, that terrible thing I said? I didn't mean it. Well, yeah, you did. That's why you said it. You did mean it. But you need to understand it came out of emptiness and fear and craziness. And now that I'm back to earth here and not feeling so empty and I'm looking at what I did, I'm going, whoa, I wouldn't say it that way now. You can say that. You can say, I've recovered. I'm going, that's just, that was terrible. And I could sure see why you'd wonder if I love you. But I can tell you this. I'm learning how to love you. And I want to keep learning how to love you. That's actually far more beautiful than insisting, oh yes, I do love you, right after you said an unloving thing. See how those two aren't compatible? And they don't believe us. You just were hateful, and now you're saying, I didn't mean it. That didn't make sense. So instead you say, I did mean it. And I want to learn how to love you better. So, read the marriage book with her. Work through the 40-day book together. Really be diligent about doing it. And learn how to give her what she's missing. And learn how to find better what you're missing. So, not so terrible. Crazy, but not so terrible. As usual, we've had great questions, and I really appreciate you all sharing your lives, and look forward to talking to you again a week from today, next Tuesday. And in the meantime, it's always about real love. Bye.